Every tear the alien girl shed caused earthquakes, and only one human could keep her smiling. The first time she cried, an entire moon split in half. The second time, a city vanished beneath the waves. So when the sirens blared through Earth's atmosphere, warning of tremors with no epicenter, the world wasn't ready for the truth. An alien girl had arrived, and she was already crying. The first time she cried, an entire moon cracked like glass across its middle. The second time, a coastal city vanished beneath tidal waves that rose from calm oceans without wind, warning, or reason. And by the third, when Earth's crust trembled despite no recorded epicenter, sirens screamed across continents, satellites spun wildly in search of logic, and world leaders demanded explanations none of their scientists could give, because they were looking for bombs, for quakes, for war machines, not for her. She fell through the clouds, wrapped in a cocoon of soft white light, drifting like ash through the sky, her descent so silent that not even the trees rustled when her fragile body touched the mossy floor of a Norwegian forest, dense with snow and frost. Soldiers arrived within hours, drawn by seismic signatures that mimicked volcanic eruption, but had no heat source, and found her, curled like a frightened child, eyes sealed shut, tears streaming from her alien face, as though she were mourning the death of stars. She looked no older than 17, her skin the color of moonstone with shifting violet undertones, her hair flowing like strands of midnight mist, and though her frame was delicate, every drop that fell from her luminous eyes sent invisible shockwaves deep into the earth below. They sedated her, not out of cruelty, but fear, and built a temporary containment dome while global powers argued whether she was a weapon, a threat, or a miracle. They called her Project Tremor. The name came from the ground readings, from the fear of what would happen if she ever woke up and wept in earnest. Yet behind all the scientific hysteria, one young man named Eli Dorn, a linguistic specialist with a background in trauma psychology, sat in a London lab reading the preliminary reports. His heart caught somewhere between disbelief and curiosity. He had lost people, his sister to an earthquake years ago, his partner to the military's cold distance, and maybe that was why he volunteered to go, even though every expert in the room warned him, don't upset her, don't get too close, don't let her cry. But Eli didn't listen to fear anymore. He was flown to the Arctic Banked facility, escorted through layers of checkpoints and armed guards, his ID stamped more times than he could count, until finally they led him into a domed chamber filled with warm light and humming containment fields. And there she was, the girl the world trembled for, sitting in the center like the eye of a cosmic storm, her knees drawn to her chest, her face buried in her arms, tears still falling slowly, each one absorbed by a levitating membrane that turned red with seismic energy readings. She didn't look dangerous. She looked lost. And unlike the others who had come before him, clad in suits and masks and fear, Eli didn't flinch. He stepped forward slowly, like approaching a wounded animal, and sat on the other side of the glass that divided them. "Hi," he said softly, his voice the first without authority or scientific distance. "I'm Eli. I'm not here to test you, I just want to help." Her head lifted slightly and her eyes met his, eyes so large, so opalescent, that he felt something ripple through his mind, not fear, but connection, like a dream shared across galaxies. She didn't speak, but the moment their gaze held, images flooded his thoughts, not words, not speech, but memories. A twin-sunned planet, fields of silver grass, laughter among ruins, a towering spire collapsing in slow motion, and then pain, blinding pain, not physical but emotional, enough to break the spirit of an entire race. Her name pulsed into his consciousness like a melody. Kaia, not her real name, but what his brain could translate from her essence. She was the last empath of her kind, a race that had evolved not just to feel, but to manifest those feelings physically, on a scale nature had never intended. They had been worshipped once, then enslaved, and when her planet fell, Kaia was taken by those who sought to use her grief as a weapon of planetary control. She escaped, but at a cost. The cost of knowing that feeling anything too deeply would destroy the world around her. And now she was here, where every sob cracked tectonic plates and every lonely night could mean the death of thousands. For days, Eli sat with her, telling stories, drawing pictures on the glass, playing old Earth lullabies through the speaker, watching as her posture slowly straightened, as her eyes began to flicker with something more than despair.
One day he told her a joke, terrible, clumsy, the kind only someone desperate to see someone smile would dare to say, and Kaia did smile. Not wide, not long, but enough that for the first time, the seismographs went still. Scientists cheered behind mirrored walls, thinking they had found a behavioral key, but Eli knew better. This wasn't control, it was connection. He wasn't calming her with formulas or frequencies. He was giving her permission to feel something safe, to feel joy, but nothing good stays untouched by power. Officials soon realized that if her joy could calm quakes, then her sorrow could be manipulated. They asked Eli to test her limits, to bring her close to sadness, to pull her back, to see how precisely her emotions could be scaled and charted for military calibration. He refused, not just morally, but fiercely, knowing that trust once betrayed would shatter Kaia's fragile stability. The next week, they replaced him. They didn't tell her. They just didn't let him return. And when Kaia waited at the glass for Eli's usual greeting and found only sterile silence, her smile faded, her hope cracked, her tears began again, slow then fast, each drop stronger than the last, until tremors shattered windows in Tokyo and tsunami alerts blared across Pacific coastlines. It took 17 hours before the military realized she wasn't angry, she was heartbroken. And heartbreak for Kaia was extinction level. Eli, meanwhile, had gone underground, furious and afraid, not of her, but of them, of what they'd do next. But he had a plan, and it started not with science, but with stories. He leaked what he knew, shared images of Kaia smiling, stories of how she bloomed like a sunrise when treated with kindness, how laughter calmed her, how cruelty triggered disaster. He made the world see her, not as a weapon, but as a girl. And somewhere, beneath layers of concrete and steel, Kaia saw his face again, not in person, but on a cracked datapad someone had left behind. She touched the screen, and for the first time in days, the earth beneath her stopped shaking, because Eli had given her what no force field or therapy or tranquilizer ever could, permission to be seen, to be felt, to feel. And in that stillness, as the world paused to watch what she might do next, a smile, soft as moonlight and powerful as tectonic plates, returned to her face. The world didn't breathe for 42 seconds after the monitors flatlined. No seismic rumble, no crustal grinding, not a flicker on the atmospheric vibration trackers that had been twitching ever since the alien girl arrived. And in the silence that followed, the analysts didn't dare exhale until one grainy surveillance feed inside the dome showed it. Kaia, sitting cross-legged, eyes focused on the flickering face of Eli Dorn through a discarded datapad, her expression calm, almost childlike, the edges of a smile beginning to curl across lips that had known only sorrow. It shouldn't have been possible, without direct interaction, without containment procedures. But Eli's words had carried more power than their technology, and it terrified them. In a windowless boardroom buried beneath Geneva, generals, prime ministers, and biotech magnates debated whether to bring him back, weaponize his bond with her, or terminate the connection before it deepened further. But deep inside that Arctic dome, under 15 meters of reinforced steel and protective earth, Kaia didn't need permission to feel anymore. She had tasted joy, flickering, soft, and fleeting, but real, and now she craved more, not like an addiction, but like breath itself, something native and necessary to her survival. She pressed her palm to the glass, watching the recorded loops of Eli laugh, speak, pause, and return, the cadence of his voice translating across her empathic senses like music. That night, the northern lights rippled brighter over her dome than any on record, and when scientists analyzed the data, They found electromagnetic frequencies synchronized with Kaia's heart rhythm, as though her body, when peaceful, resonated with the Earth's own magnetic field. They called it the harmonic pulse, but Kaia called it something else entirely in the images. She began to draw on the walls using her finger. Unity, not the kind made of treaties and steel, but the delicate golden thread of emotional symmetry, the invisible way one soul stitched itself into another through kindness. Meanwhile, Eli had gone rogue, slipping away from the classified lodges of UN-appointed exile, faking clearance through abandoned side channels, guided by one goal: to return to her. Not as a pawn, not as a scientist, but as a person who saw her not as a force to manage, but a girl trying to breathe through unbearable grief. He knew the higher-ups wouldn't allow it, so he didn't ask. He traveled through the back corridors of information leaks, connecting with resistance tech engineers, underground pacifist groups, even retired alien biologists, all people sick of watching sentient life be used as property. With their help, Eli designed something forbidden, a mobile interface rig that could restabilize Kaia's seismic energy without chemical dampening, a joy mirror, as one of the coders called it, a device that could reflect her feelings back at her in real time, stabilizing her state not through sedation but through empathy feedback. To work, it needed a live anchor. It needed him. It wasn't just science. It was risk, colossal and foolish and beautiful. The kind of idea no institution would approve because they'd rather control a girl than care for her. But Eli didn't care about policy anymore. The people at the top had proven they couldn't be trusted with hearts, much less the ones powerful enough to shift continents. He made his way toward the Arctic facility on foot through the tundra, using forged clearance codes and a memory of the security layout. His breath freezing on his lips, body shaking in the wind, but mind sharp and burning. Inside the dome, Kaia began refusing food, not in rebellion but in quiet protest. The military handlers assumed she was growing volatile, that the silent rebellion was a precursor to another quake. They ramped up isolation protocols, sealed off entertainment access, and threatened to sedate her fully if her vital signs didn't stabilize. They didn't understand she wasn't malfunctioning, she was mourning. Mourning Eli's absence, mourning her own power, mourning the realization that her emotions could never exist freely without endangering the very soil she walked on. She curled into herself, hands clenched, pulse rising, and the tremors returned. Not full earthquakes yet, but the soft groans of a planet preparing to cry with her. But just as the alert alarms blared red, the tremors stopped, because Kaia looked up. Her eyes widened. On the edge of the outer camera feed, a blurry figure appeared, frostbitten, limping, but unmistakably him, Eli. The guards saw it too and rushed to intercept, but Kaia stood tall for the first time in days. She stepped forward, hands glowing with quiet, trembling blue light, and the lights throughout the facility shorted out. Not violently, gently, like a sigh. Doors unlocked, gates unlatched, and by the time the guards reached the entrance to her containment corridor, Eli was already there, slumping to his knees, snow trailing behind him, the mirror rig pulsing faintly from his chest like a second heartbeat. Kaia dropped beside him. Her hands didn't touch him, but the air between them vibrated with raw, open emotion, longing, fear, relief, all swirling in a symphony of unspoken things. Her tears didn't fall. They hovered, suspended like stars above her lashes, and when Eli looked into her eyes and whispered, "I'm here now, you're not alone," the tears vanished entirely, not suppressed, but absorbed into the warmth of what he gave her. Emotion without devastation, feeling without collapse, joy with a place to land. The rig calibrated itself instantly, stabilizing her empathic field through its neural feedback, allowing her to laugh, truly laugh, without cracking the ground. It was the first time she'd felt safe enough to feel joy without restraint. and the world felt it too. That night, seismographs globally recorded a moment of silence so pure that even volcanoes paused their breath. Scientists didn't know how to explain it, but Eli and Kaia did. It was resonance, not the forced kind from weapons or drugs, but the soft, mutual beat of two people who finally understood each other. Word of Eli's return and Kaia's transformation leaked fast, not through official reports but through viral footage released by a janitor who had witnessed her laughter blossom like sunlight across her skin. The public, already uneasy with how their governments were treating alien arrivals, demanded transparency. Protests sparked, not out of anger, but hope that maybe the alien wasn't a threat, but a being of unimaginable empathy who could teach them something they'd long forgotten: how to honor emotion. The powers in charge tried to bury it, but the tide had turned. Across continents, young people lit candles in her name, painted murals of her face surrounded by words like balance, kindness, feel, and at the center of it all, Kaia stood not as a symbol, but as a girl who had once broken planets with grief and was now learning to heal them with laughter, not because someone taught her control, but because someone reminded her of joy. Eli never left her side again. They redesigned the containment dome into a sanctuary, not a cage, but a space of harmony where Kaia could explore art, sound, memory, and dream. She began to communicate more directly, not with words at first, but through tactile emotion. Images projected from her thoughts onto walls, colors blooming with feelings too complex for Earth languages. Eli worked with her every day, translating what he could, learning that sometimes a shade of blue could carry more truth than 1,000 sentences. And every night, the stars above the dome shimmered a little brighter, as though the sky itself were grateful that the girl who could destroy worlds with tears was finally learning what it meant to smile. And to be smiled at in return. It began with a flower, a simple crimson bloom Kaia conjured in the palm of her hand, using particles from the air, a small, pulsing miracle shaped entirely by emotion, delicate yet impossible by any known biological standard. And when she offered it to Eli with trembling fingers and a quiet, expectant gaze, he knew the rules of their world had changed forever. No longer was Kaia just a contained anomaly or a girl barely surviving behind reinforced glass. She was becoming a creator, a sculptor of life through feeling, and the implications sent shockwaves far deeper than any tremor her grief had caused. Inside the newly softened walls of the Arctic Dome, her sanctuary now transformed into a living gallery of emotion, Kaia learned how to express herself through shape and sensation, building images that reacted to mood, a sculpture that hummed when someone smiled, a mural that dimmed when Eli frowned, and an artificial stream that glowed brighter with every word of kindness exchanged. Eli became more than her translator. He was her emotional anchor, her stabilizing field, and, slowly, her confidant. They shared meals now side by side without barriers, as Kaia's physiology evolved to accommodate Earth's environment for longer periods, not because of any drug or injection, but because her body adapted in response to emotional safety. Love, though they never dared name it, was rewiring her biology in ways no laboratory could understand. And yet, the outside world continued to watch, to fear, to politicize. Media headlines churned with theories. Was Kaia a sleeper weapon, a new species of deity, or merely a teenager with the burden of tectonic sorrow? Conspiracy forums argued whether Eli had fallen under her psychic control, while others claimed she was the universe's answer to humanity's coldness, sent to crack the world open and rebuild it with compassion. The truth was far less dramatic and far more terrifying. She was simply a girl learning to feel without causing destruction, and in doing so, she was threatening every system built on apathy, Governments scrambled to respond, their satellites recording every smile Kaia made and every harmonic surge that followed. They feared she was gathering power, but the reality was simpler. Her emotional resonance was expanding not as a weapon, but like ripples in water when something warm is dropped into the cold. Eli knew they wouldn't wait much longer. The dome, despite its peaceful turn, remained under military jurisdiction, and sooner or later, someone would demand a contingency plan. When a delegation arrived, 3 diplomats, 2 analysts, and a grim-faced general with fingers twitching near his sidearm, Kaia stood between them and Eli, her posture calm but unwavering. They spoke in veiled warnings, citing planetary risk and containment ethics. But Kaia, having absorbed more than just language from Eli, interrupted them with a phrase that didn't exist in any of their briefing files. "If I am danger, why do flowers grow in my hand when I'm loved?" There was silence, profound, painful silence, and in it, even the general looked away. But diplomacy is rarely governed by truth. That night, as Eli sat with Kaia near the luminescent stream she had made, watching the stars above flicker like notes in a lullaby, he admitted what he'd feared to tell her. They were planning to move her. Not for study, for exile, a permanent relocation to a cryo-sealed vessel in orbit where her emotions could no longer affect Earth's crust. Kaia didn't cry. She simply placed her hand over her chest and whispered, "They don't want me to feel." And in that instant, a single tear, small and resolute, fell from her cheek onto the soil of her sanctuary, and the ground beneath them didn't shatter but opened gently, like an ancient secret revealing itself. Below the dome, something stirred, an energy source long dormant awakened by Kaia's empathy and grief, a luminous cavern hidden beneath the Arctic frost, pulsing with frequencies identical to her own. Scientists had thought the dome sat on permafrost, but they had been wrong. It sat above what Kaia called in her language the mother root, an ancient emotional conduit left behind by her ancestors, a seed they'd embedded in promising worlds long before humans stood upright. And now, Kaia's presence had activated it. Lights poured from the floor, wrapping around her body in spirals of memory and sound, not harming but harmonizing. Eli reached for her hand, and when their fingers touched, the energy responded, not violently but joyfully. It had been waiting not for conquest, but for connection. Alarms blared. Military command lost control of half the surveillance feeds, but the people didn't, because a leak, deliberate, anonymous, sent the footage across the internet within minutes, and what the world saw was not terror, but transcendence. A girl glowing with warmth, a man at her side, and the Earth, for the first time in centuries, responding not with quakes, but with music. Subsonic pulses recorded by global monitors translated into harmonic chords, what some would call a planetary song. Protests erupted again, but this time not in cities, in nature. Forests pulsed with the same rhythm. Oceans surged gently toward shores. Animals began behaving as if soothed by an unseen lullaby. The Earth was not rejecting Kaia. It was welcoming her, and that terrified those who had spent decades believing power was control. They sent a kill team, discreet and deniable, to shut it down. But Kaia already knew. The mother root had shown her, and when the team arrived, weapons drawn, she did not resist. She walked to them barefoot, her skin glowing like dawn, and simply smiled. The team dropped their weapons. Every single one, not by force, but because in her presence, they felt what she felt: love, fear, grief, hope, a lifetime of emotion in a single breath. And not one of them could find it in their heart to fire, not anymore. What happened next was never fully explained, not even by Eli. The dome transformed, not violently, gradually. The energy from beneath wove upward into the walls, dissolving the steel and concrete, reshaping it into crystal and light. Not alien metal, but organic resonance, architecture made of feeling. The world watched as the facility became a temple of sorts, not for worship, but for witnessing, a space where emotion was not weaponized but honored. And Kaia stood at the center, not as a queen or a prisoner, but as a bridge. Eli stood beside her, no longer just a human man, but something more, her echo, her mirror, her anchor. Together they had shown that a single human heart, when honest, could quiet the cries of a girl powerful enough to break the world. And in return, she had given the world something it had lost. The reminder that feeling deeply was not a flaw, but a path to healing. The world had changed, and it began with a smile, not a broadcasted declaration or a worldwide summit, but a simple, radiant smile from the alien girl, who had once made mountains tremble with her tears. Kaia stood now not behind barriers, but before the world, her hand in Eli's, the two of them no longer symbols of fear or anomaly, but of possibility, of healing, of what happens when empathy is allowed to grow unshackled. The dome that once imprisoned her had become the Earth's most visited and virtually streamed site, a sanctuary made not of stone and wire, but of memory-reactive crystals and song-responsive air, where each visitor left behind not data or judgment, but pieces of emotion encoded into its living walls. Journalists dubbed it the heart of Earth. Scientists called it a biological resonance hub. Poets named it the place where sorrow sleeps. But to Kaia and Eli, it was simply home. Yet not all watched with hope. As Kaia's presence triggered a planetary shift, more stable tectonics, fewer volcanic anomalies, rainfall synchronized with agricultural need, power brokers in both government and corporate spheres felt their control slipping. Because if an alien girl could change the world by feeling honestly, what place was left for manipulation, fear-mongering, and enforced silence? A final act was drafted behind closed doors, a nullification protocol disguised as a deep space rescue mission meant to lure Kaia away from Earth with the promise of answers about her people's disappearance. But the data was false. The destination a barren trap designed to isolate and eventually destroy the Mother Root's bond. When Eli intercepted the transmission, his blood ran cold. He didn't tell Kaia immediately, not out of deceit, but to buy time. Together with sympathetic scientists and a network of those whose lives had quietly improved, since Kaia's emotional field began harmonizing Earth's rhythms, he created a counterplan. Expose the truth and let the world decide, not through violence, through vulnerability. So Kaia, once again before the cameras, did what she had always done best. She felt. She opened herself, for the first time entirely, without shielding or fear, and let her memories stream into the crystal walls of the sanctuary, like rivers into the sea. People across the globe saw her childhood on a ruined moon, felt the loneliness of her drift through space in the last seed ship, touched the despair of waking on a planet that recoiled from her grief. And then they felt Eli, his first smile, his patience, his stubborn refusal to be afraid. The boy who had sat beside the quaking girl and offered not solutions, but presence. The human who had loved without agenda. The moment trended in every language. Across screens and streets, in classrooms and cafes, people wept. Not out of fear, but recognition. Because Kaia wasn't alien anymore. She was them, magnified. Every suppressed scream, every unspoken ache, every lonely night encoded in her aura had mirrored their own. And now she was smiling, and the Earth was singing with her. The protocol was cancelled not by order, but by protest. Millions demanding protection, not elimination. Officials tried to contain the fallout, but they were a step too late. Because the sanctuary was growing, not in size, but in influence. Other sites began responding, ancient mountains humming in the same frequency, deep ocean vents pulsing with low harmonic tones. It was as if the earth itself had been waiting, holding its breath for the return of one who could speak its original language. Kaia's ancestors had not just seeded a girl, they had seeded harmony, a forgotten ability to link emotion with ecology, and Eli, in his humanity, had reactivated it not with intellect, but integrity. They had one final choice to make. The mother root, now fully awakened, offered Kaia a possibility to become its core, to merge with the planetary network completely, stabilizing Earth's biosphere indefinitely, but at the cost of her form, her memories, and her bond with Eli. She would not die, but she would dissolve, becoming presence, not person. Eli was the one who refused first. "There must be another way," he said, fists clenched, voice trembling. Kaia touched his cheek, eyes full of sorrow and certainty. "There always is," she said, "but not always the one we want." For 3 days they walked through every memory, every laugh, every time he'd taught her a new Earth phrase, or she'd shown him a sky pattern from her homeworld. They danced beneath the auroras she wove with her hands. They kissed under stars that pulsed to her heartbeat. And then, when the final day came, Kaia stood before the heart of the sanctuary, her skin shimmering with the hues of dawn, and whispered a single word in a language only Eli had ever truly heard. "Stay." A final tear rolled down her cheek, and this time the earth didn't shake, it bloomed. From the roots beneath the sanctuary to the skies above, vines of light spread across the globe, unseen but felt, like the warmth of forgiveness. Kaia stepped into the core, and her body dissolved into beams of radiant energy. The sanctuary pulsed once, and then glowed steady. The girl was gone, but her presence remained. In the months that followed, Earth changed, not radically but subtly. Crops grew in struggling regions, storms averted at the last moment, violence dropped inexplicably in areas where Eli visited, because Kaia was still there, not as a ghost, not as a god, but as harmony itself. She had become the heartbeat of Earth. Eli stayed on as caretaker of the sanctuary, now renamed by public vote as the Echo Garden. He taught school children about resonance. He answered tourists' questions with grace and stories, and at night, when the stars came out, he sat by the crystal river she had made and whispered about his day, just as he had in the beginning, knowing she heard him in the wind, in the glow, in the peace that had spread like soft fire across the world. In time, other children born near the sanctuary began to show small signs, plants blooming when they laughed, storms calming when they sang. The legacy had not ended, it had only begun, and in the soil of a once barren earth, a single message pulsed on in Kaia's voice, woven into the roots of everything alive. Feel deeply, love honestly, and the world will heal with you.